Welcome to Holistic Human Performance Podcast. My name is Gena Bradshaw, where we talk all things holistic health, wellness, spirituality, fitness, meditation, energetics, and so much more to help you become the healthiest version of yourself. Let's dive in. This is not medical advice. This is simply to help you on your journey through health, fitness, and wellness. I hope this helps. You can complement this with anything that you are doing currently in your life. Enjoy. I want to talk about meditation. I have been meditating for over 10 years now, and when I tell you it has completely transformed my life on every single aspect, it truly has brought me back to this wholeness state my mind, body, and soul was craving for so long, and I didn't even realize it. Now you may be thinking, meditation, I can't sit there in stillness. There are so many ways to meditate. And maybe you're asking yourself, you've been wanting to meditate, but you don't know where to start. Or maybe you've fallen off the routine and you need a little support to get back into your flow. Then I've got something for you. Introducing the 10-day meditation challenge now on the Holistic Human Performance app. It was made just for you. These guided meditations are 3 to 5 minutes, short, powerful, and intentional. Each day will give you a specific theme, and it's a fresh energy reset and a gentle way to reconnect with yourself. Whether you're brand new or just need a reboot, this is your sign to say yes to stillness. And the best part, you get to try it out for a week free when you sign up now. Head on over to the Holistic Human Performance app, join the challenge, and start transforming your mornings in just as little as 3 to 5 minutes a day. Your peace is waiting and you deserve it. Head on over to the Apple Store or Google Play to find Holistic Human Performance app now. Again, try it out with a week free trial, either for your monthly subscription or annual subscription. You will not regret it. I'll put all of the information in the show notes. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Holistic Human Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Gena Bradshaw Vitale, and today we have a special guest with us. We have Seth Jones, the CEO of Hygia Living Corp. And the visionary behind Superstratum, the first patent-pending process designed to remove mycotoxins from the home. With a background as an international DJ and songwriter, Seth's journey took a dramatic turn after a personal encounter with building-related illness. Now he's dedicated to healing the estimated 66 million U.S. homes that contribute to toxic conditions affecting 170 million people. His vision is clear: to elevate our health by purifying the environments we live in. So excited to have you on and dive into this topic. Yes. So you started in a whole different avenue and industry of life, total like opposite of the end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
What even got you into what you do today? There's obviously a story behind that.
There is. There is a story, and I can't take any credit for it because I had no idea. I think the theme in my life overall is I just kind of follow my intuition. Things interest me and I get interested in them, and then later it's kind of revealed to me, what the purpose of it was. And I went to school in Nashville and Nashville, Tennessee. I lived there for about 10 years. I got a degree in music business, so when I was in college, I had a band. We signed a record deal, and that kind of started my musical career. Over the next 15 or so years, I did everything from producing and writing music. I did a lot of work in Europe. I started going over to Germany and Scandinavia and working with a lot of artists. And when I was there, I got into the electronic music scene in Amsterdam and became a DJ. And then I came back to the States, and for about 5 years, I was a DJ and an artist, and I toured and released music and played. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I was living in a house, a pretty big property. There were 5 bedrooms on the property. There was an apartment out back, and there were different people that kind of came in and out. And I didn't realize it at the time, but like many houses in LA, it was a very toxic house, and everyone who lived in that house got extremely sick. Um,
Mm.
a lot of gut issues, a lot of mental issues, mental health. Um, one girl lost her appendix. There was another, there all sorts of things happened. But my personal experience was I was in a relationship at that time, and my girlfriend started spending a lot of time at the house, and she had had an exposure as a child. That it was funny. I'd already started the company actually because we had talked about some of our products, but I had met a chemist who had developed what's now our endurance coating, a very revolutionary mold resistant coating. And that was the thing that I said, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know anything about chemicals. I didn't know anything about mold other than that I grew up in Louisiana. So there was, mold everywhere. But we
Yeah,
had
very like damp atmosphere.
totally, yeah.
Yeah.
And humidity and moisture, have to be very, very controlled in the South. Whereas in LA, that's not the case. It
Mm.
rains once a year and everything leaks, and the landlords call their handymans and they paint over everything. And then you really don't think about it again. And so I had not thought about it, even though I was building a company that was focused on this problem. I didn't realize that I was living in a house that had that problem. And unfortunately, my partner got extremely sick
Mm.
with a lot of issues, gut issues, chronic pain, chronic fatigue. And then it really took over her mind. And it was a pretty tragic story. She kind of lost it to the point where she became delusional and thought that I was trying to kill her, and this whole she wound up kind of breaking and running away, and actually never spoke to her again.
Oh
And
my goodness.
yeah, it was a really very, very traumatic experience for myself and for her and for everyone who was involved. And I didn't, it wasn't until a couple of years later where I had done so much research and had worked with so many people, I started to realize, wait a minute, all of these symptoms, I kind of ran it back and I realized that everyone who lived in that house, including myself, were exhibiting these symptoms. And so on a trip back to LA, I went back to the house and I knocked on the door. And at that point, there was a testing method. There was no way to test for mycotoxins at this time that we were there. But later there was. And so I knocked on the door and I ran a test, and we found trichothecenes, which is the most toxic black mold toxin that was in that house. So
Oof.
um, it was kind of a full circle moment where, I had been working on this problem for 2 or 3 years. And then in retrospect, realized that, it was the very thing that myself and a lot of people who I was very close to had suffered from in that house.
That is insane.
Yeah.
And so many people do not realize that the obviously we know the environment plays a huge role in our health. Like it's no secret at this point. But I think so many people are resistant to looking at their home. I don't know if it's a fearful thing. I don't know if people don't think about it and then they're like, well, what do I do? Because that's like overwhelming. I mean, what do you even do at that point? You kind of have to, if it's that black mold, like that's deadly. You have to move out.
Yeah, some people do, and we'll talk about this, but the difference between mold and mycotoxins,
I was
they're
going to ask you this.
related.
Yes.
Yeah. So mycotoxins are the poison that mold creates. It's actually a chemical. So we're familiar with mold, and mold can make us sick, that mold spores, all these things. But mycotoxins are the defense mechanism of mold because mold's a living organism. So it is competing in its environment just like other organisms compete. And it's competing against other molds and bacteria. And so
Mm,
mycotoxins are made by molds specifically to kill bacteria. And that's what antibiotics are. So penicillin, when it comes from a fungus, that's a mycotoxin. Mycophenolic acid, which is used when you have an organ transplant to suppress the immune system so that your immune system doesn't attack the organ. Those are mycotoxins. So we use these chemicals in some respects to get rid of bacteria. But what happens in a building is when mold grows, particularly in modern buildings. This problem is actually getting worse because what we're
yeah.
doing now is we're sealing up these buildings, and you see it when buildings are being built. They wrap it up with plastic, all the windows are sealed, and that's to keep energy costs down. It keeps the conditioned air inside the building. But that creates another problem. When you seal something up and moisture gets into that sealed environment, it can't evaporate like it could in houses that had more airflow. So mold grows more easily in modern buildings. And then when it does, it starts to release those mycotoxins. So the toxins,
Mm.
the chemicals get trapped inside of the building. And traditional mold remediation will kill and remove the mold, but it can leave behind that toxin because the chemicals that mold remediators use don't destroy the chemical compound. They'll kill the mold, but they don't break apart that molecule. So that is what superstratum, that's what we developed, what we focus on. We said, okay, there's mold remediation, but there's this missing gap. What happens after the mold remediation? People go back into the homes and they stay sick. And in some cases, they get even sicker because that mold remediator, I'm dealing with this right now with a very famous professional athlete, very large house. His kids are extremely sick because they had a mold remediator come in. They found a leak that had been there for a couple of years in a brand new, probably 6,000, 7,000 square foot home. And the mold remediator came in, he remediated it. But in that process, he made the building so toxic they had to flee the home.
Oh my
So they're
goodness.
not even living in the home right now. So our process involves all of our products in our system. We call it our home detox system, and
Mm.
that is something that people can do themselves. Their professional can do it if they're doing it in tandem with the remediation. But one of the things that we realized when we started the company, we focused on the professionals because they were the ones solving the problem. But we learned really quickly that the professional industry is not as motivated to innovate because it is a mature, consolidated industry. They use the same chemicals they've been using for 40 years. And the awareness is just not there. So what we found was people were calling us, people who were sick, who needed the solution. So we took our solution and we made it into a DIY solution. So now it's something that people can do. They can get on our website. We have an order wizard. They can enter in all the details of their home, and it creates a custom package of our products that they can use to purify their environment.
Wow. Okay, so my first question is when you, like going back, when you were dealing with these symptoms when you were living in LA, did you notice that, when you were traveling and stuff, did you notice that these symptoms went away? And then also like while you were having these symptoms, did you do anything about it or you just kind of like let it rock out?
Yeah, so I did not feel the difference when I left the home, but most people do, and that's the number one sign. If you travel and your energy comes back, your skin clears up, your bloating goes away, 99.9% chance, that is caused by something that's in that building, and that is almost always a mycotoxin. There are other things in the building like EMFs and endotoxins
Yeah.
and bacterias, um, but usually when people get to the point where those affect them, it's because the terrain of their body has deteriorated to a point where they're susceptible to all of these things. And that is, I think, the hardest thing for people to understand when we think about sickness and all sickness and chronic illness, autoimmune disease and cancer and these types of things, some of them we're conditioned to think are just idiopathic. Oh, there's no real call. We don't really know, right? But here's the treatment. Here's the pharmaceuticals you need to take here. And that hamster wheel is almost always what people get caught into. And this was the case, my partner, I was taking her to different doctors and she was on antibiotics almost constantly. But those won't get you better. And in many cases, they'll actually make you worse, especially
Yeah.
start taking antibiotics because what those toxins are doing in the body is they're altering the terrain of the body, the microbiome and all these organisms that we need, right? And antibiotics do that as well, right? When you take those antibiotics. So in many cases, you're just perpetuating, the chronic symptoms that you're experiencing from the building. And you're exactly right. Many people, they're very hesitant to look at the building. And there's a few reasons why. Number one is because most people know, like deep down,
You know.
right? But they also know that if I acknowledge this, then I have to do something about it. And it's terrifying to think about mold remediation and the cost of this. And the even after spending, I mean, we've seen people who've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and and have lost all of their money and are upside down in their house and they still can't go back into the house. So that's the fear from taking action that many people have. It's just I don't want to have to deal with it. That's number one. And number two is actually more of a spiritual reason
Mm.
that our health is it is extremely common for me to run into people and they find out what I do and they're like, oh, that's super interesting. And I know immediately if they're sick, even if they haven't admitted it, right? And through that conversation, I'll start asking them questions. Oh, no, I'm fine. And then by the end, they're said, oh, well, I'm chronically fatigued and I have got skin issues and my wife has got this and my husband's got this. And they put all these pieces together and in real time, they realize like, oh my goodness, I actually am sick. So a lot of people, their baseline of health has risen to a point where they're not even conscious that their natural state is actually a state of being chronically sick. So for a lot of people, it's the identity of their sickness, right? They've been depressed for years. They've had autoimmune disease. They found an identity in that sickness. They because their doctors continue to reinforce that, because they've got a community of people who are also sick, because they've got sympathy, because they're sick, and that is really the spiritual process that people have to wake up from, to even take that first step. So I learned, I thought when we started this company, I saw how many people were sick. It almost became like a party trick. I would meet someone and within 5 minutes, I would solve, it was like House, the show, how I would solve the mystery of why they were sick. It's so common and it's so easy to see when you understand this, but it's not easy to see when you're in it. Like myself, I mean, I started the company and built it for 3 years before I realized that, oh, yeah, that anxiety and like these things that I had been kind of pursuing other solutions for, that it was actually happening right there from my home. And a lot of people, because we're so indoctrinated into the idea of germ theory, right? That, okay,
Yeah.
we catch a cold, we get sick, and then our body gets rid of it. That is not how chronic illness works. It's an entirely different paradigm. Chronic illness is toxicity, and toxicity comes from the environment. That toxicity then creates a deficiency in the body, in the cells, because that mold or that toxin or that parasite or that heavy metal is taking something that the cell needs. So that deficiency then creates an adaptation in the body, in the cell. The cell adapts to survive in that deficient and toxic environment. Well, and you can think about this on a micro level or a macro level. This is true of us as humans and not just true with chemical toxins. It's true in our emotional state, right? If there's a child and the father is abusive to the child, well, that child is deficient, right, in love, in the care that it needs to develop properly. So when that child grows up, if it doesn't heal its relationship with his father, if he doesn't go through the therapy or whatever it is, then when that child has another child, that adaptation, the child's behavior and pattern becomes a mutation, right? It becomes encoded into that child's psychology. And in the case of the cell, it becomes encoded into the DNA because
Mm.
bacterias, molds, these types of things, they live in the environment of the cell and they take things. But toxins and viruses actually enter the cell and they get into the DNA and they cause the DNA to change and express differently. And then that cell just keeps replicating. And this is why we stay sick. And it's why it's so difficult to heal from toxicity because you do have to remove the toxins out of the environment. That's the first step, right? Heal the environment. Then you have to remove the toxins from the body. But even once you've done that, there's a morphogenetic issue in the DNA that data essentially that the cell has collected that's now not in the DNA, physical DNA, but it's in the morphogenetic electromagnetic field that forms the DNA. That's what passes the information down. That just continues to replicate. And the mutation causes the symptom. So the symptom is just a signal. It's actually a healing mechanism of the body. It's just signaling to the body that there's something in the environment that is causing this dysfunction in the body. But if you go to a doctor, what do? They never ask you about the environment. They never look at toxicity. They just give you the drug that they've been trained to give you based on that symptom. But that symptom, let's talk about your liver, right? That symptom, that liver symptom can be from a toxin. Your liver can't process the toxin. And so you've got your hair falls out, or your skin, you get psoriasis or eczema, or you get bloating, or all these types of things. But it can also, other things can cause that symptom, right? If you go into Eastern Chinese medicine, you learn that emotions in our subtle energy body also cause symptoms. So that anger, and now we've got a case right now, of a child that's extremely poisoned by mycotoxins. And one of the ways that children exhibit these symptoms is through their behavior, because their
Yeah.
bodies are strong, but their minds, they can't cope. So you
Yep.
get lots of anger and behavioral issues in children. Well, that could be an emotional issue as well, or it could be an emotional issue and a toxin, both double teaming that liver, right? And that's what, we're very passionate about educating people around that, because a lot of people will say, oh, well, I had that autoimmune disease before I moved into the building. Yeah, it's way worse, but the building didn't cause it. Well, you have to think of it in the ways of like your environment is going to affect you based on your specific biology, right? Your specific genetics. And it's becoming more known now that things like an MTHFR mutation, right, which
Yeah.
you now know about, that these are linked to autoimmune disease, it's linked to autism in children, it's linked to Alzheimer's and dementia. And the way we think about genetics is we go, I have an MTHFR mutation. So now there is a higher chance that these things could just appear in our lives. But it's not a chance. You can actually have a lower chance of getting autoimmune disease and cancer and all these things if you have an MTHFR mutation, if you know that that mutation is making you more susceptible in that environment. So your body cannot methylate and remove those toxins from the body. So that is how you lead to that. So it's not a death sentence, it's not a sentence for sickness, but it does mean that you have to be even especially careful in your environment, and you have to make sure your environment is pure. And that also causes the difference that people experience, which is the biggest source of conflict, especially in relationships. Women are more affected by these toxins because of things like hormones and because they spend
Hmm.
more time in the building. And women have an intuition about their family and their environment, even more so than men. So they catch it in the kids, they know it in themselves. But many times, if the husband's not sick, if he, makes the financial decisions, then there's this block, right,
Yeah.
between being able to take action. So a lot of this is information. It's educating people about these things so that they can look at their own situation and be like, oh, no, I have a major problem. Our musty crawl space and my eczema, or my child's pandas and pans, these things are, if you are suffering from any of these things and you have it in your environment, it doesn't really matter the combination, right? It doesn't matter, okay, did it start from a vaccine or heavy metal?
Yeah. Right.
It doesn't matter because you're in that environment right now, and that toxicity is exacerbating those symptoms and those diseases.
I have so many things that I need to say. You just described epigenetics so beautifully. That was like a symphony. Um, I completely, and this is exactly what I do for a living. We're combining looking at, all right, this holistic lifestyle. And by the way, I'm like the last person that the individual will come to. They're like, I've seen all these doctors. I don't know what is going on. They're putting me on this. And you're right. It becomes like this hamster wheel. They're on all of these medications. You're adding to all of the disruption and all the toxins and chemicals in the body. And I'm like, all right, we have to hit this from both angles now because we now have an emotional component that's affecting your physiology. And we also have to hit it from like this scientific perspective of, okay, what is your environment? What types of products are you using? I always laugh because I think it's the funniest thing when, um, people are trying to like clean up their diet and stuff, or, they're utilizing like a different laundry detergent and things like that. But if they're like trying to minimize all of these toxins, but yet they're using, like specific like paint with lead in it, or there's so many different examples, or they're, you know, dyeing their hair or something. It's like these small little things that we don't realize that literally could break the camel's back. That straw could break the camel's back. It just depends on like that overload in the body. And to your point with epigenetics, it mutates the DNA, and a lot of people don't realize. So I'm currently pregnant right now, and I've been doing just a lot of like, ancestral healing work and also just making sure that my environment's very clean. I also grew up in kind of this environment, but still, a lot of people don't realize that these heavy metals, these toxins, these chemicals from our environment, I mean, it goes through the placenta, it gets traveled and it gets trapped in like that DNA.
Mhm.
And what can happen is, let's just say you're doing the whole like vaccine schedule and things like that. The baby could have an overload of toxins from birth and the environment that mama was in, and that could just break the camel's back. It's
Absolutely right.
so like you hit the nail on the head, and I love that you're educating from this perspective because it is so important for people to understand. And like you said, you intuitively know. You just don't want to say it because then you're faced to actually make decisions and change your life. And people are so used to the identity of the illness. Oh, well, like, who am I without this? Right.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, a pretty good example. I was on TikTok the other day and I was just like kind of scrolling and just like, doing some market research. And I came across this woman who was talking about how she had Hashimoto's. She's had it for a while. Then it turned into like Graves' disease and all this stuff. And I'm like, so by the way, I had thyroid cancer when I was age 20. So I did a lot of research on this. And I commented and I said, have you looked into Epstein's Barr virus and have you looked to see, that nestles in the thyroid? There's obviously other things, but she was like, oh, I've had chronic Epstein's Barr virus for most of my life. And I said, yeah, listen, like there's a lot of like simple things that you can do like without being overwhelming. She's like, oh no, that's okay. I'm seeing a ton of doctors. But she's like complaining about how she's like on all these
Yeah.
medications.
One of the things that I tell people, like if you've been going to the same doctor and you're not getting better, and that doctor has never asked you about your environment, go to a different doctor. Like if
Yes.
you kept taking your car back to the same mechanic and every time you left, it didn't get fixed, you'd be
Why
like,
are you
not a
going?
good mechanic. Like it's not working. He doesn't understand what's caused that. And you're exactly right. And Epstein-Barr, you know, one of the things that we see, because we do work on the health side as well, and you brought up diet, and diet, excuse me, is one of those
Yeah.
things that diet is one of those things that obviously is important, right? It's one
Yeah.
of the most important things. But I see people a lot who get sick, then they change their diet, and the carnivore diet, is a really popular. They cut everything out, and their symptoms go away. And they say, "Oh, I'm healed." And what I try and tell them is, you're not healed. You've just removed all of the things that are causing the inflammation in your body. Your
Yeah.
leaky gut and your allergies are a symptom of toxicity, right?
Hmm.
Toxins cause the gut permeability, then the body reacts to that. So it is actually a sign of toxicity. And when you're talking about Epstein-Barr, and we've seen this a lot, one case in particular, one of the most extreme cases that I've worked with, a family got mold poison. The whole family got extremely, extremely sick. Their grandfather actually killed himself from toxicity. He was in the building and they got it remediated. He stayed sick. They couldn't figure it out, and he committed suicide. And then that created kind of this trauma event that then for the child, for his granddaughter, and she was in the building and got so sick that, and they knew it was mold. They took her to a functional doctor to try and treat the mold, and the doctor made her worse. And when we found her, she had been bedridden she was dying. She'd been bedridden for 2 months. She had the craziest symptoms. She could not see sunlight. She couldn't be exposed to sunlight. And she couldn't take, her nervous system, the energetics of her nervous system was so sensitive, she couldn't take medicine. In fact, if you even put vitamin C in her hand, she would have a seizure. And her mother, they were trying to acclimate her. She would hold the medicine and touch her, and she would seize even from the transfer the energy. So I mean, she was in really, really bad shape.
Whoa.
And we looked holistically, at what had happened to her. And what we realized was when she was a child, she had Epstein-Barr. And what had
Mm.
happened was the mold is really what pushed her over the edge. But
Yeah.
what it did is it collapsed her immune system to the point where the Epstein-Barr then overtook her nervous system. And so she was actually dying from Epstein-Barr, even though the mold was the thing. So we can talk a little bit about kind of this. This gets more into the fun stuff,
I
but
know.
some of the exciting things that we're working on are actually in the treatment side, around energetic quantum medicine. And
Ooh, love
uh,
that.
there was a treatment that we did for her. Actually, we gave her 1 ounce of water. Actually, it came straight from our refrigerator. We filled it up out of the filter in our refrigerator, and that water was programmed with a certain frequency of light. And within 3 weeks, she was walking again and on vacation with her family. She's completely healed now. Yeah,
What?
she did nothing else other than put a couple drops of water in her mouth. And the reason that that healed her and saved her life is because this was her problem. That quantum energy, or rather quantum information, which is light, was the information that her body, that cell needed, her nervous system cells needed to stop reproducing the damaged cell that was susceptible to the Epstein-Barr. So when that happened, her nervous system started healing the cells, and it pushed the Epstein-Barr out of her nervous system and healed her. That's the body. That is the body healing itself. And that's what this treatment does. The treatment doesn't heal the body. The treatment gives the body the information that it needs. Because we have, and this is another thing that I talk about a lot, and I've learned this from, our research team on the body in this. And we actually have 5 bodies, right?
Hmm.
Our physical body is our energy. That's our electrical body. That's the plus charge. That's the
Hmm.
masculine form, right? But we also have a magnetic body, because
Yep.
the entire universe is built in polarity. There's masculine and feminine. There's electricity and magnetism. There's acid and base, right? On and on and on. And when you get into the subtle energy body, the magnetic field, this is the body of your emotions. So above the physical body is the emotional body. That's the magnetic field um, that registers the energy of our emotions. Then above that, we have the mental body. This is where our thoughts happen. And then above that, we have the supermental body, or the astral body. And this is where,
You're talking my
I'm
language.
sure I am, right? And then above that, we have the bliss body, right? And the bliss body is the source, or God, or however you want to say it. And what I like to tell people is our bodies are like antennas.
Yep.
They're tuned to the frequency of this earth, of this human frequency. It's the same as um, your solar plexus. That is the human frequency is about 7.8 hertz. Up the octaves, that is on the piano. If you hit a note D on the piano, that's the same frequency. That's the frequency of your solar plexus. So we're anchored into this energetic resonance of Earth. And health, pure health, is a coherent quantum connection between this pure light energy that comes down into a channel, right, through our crown, into our bodies. And then as it slows down, it branches out. Those are our meridians. And
Yep.
all those little riverbeds end on our hands and feet, right? There's electrical energy in our body, which is very well known, but our body is also giving off light, actual light. Your DNA cells are emitting the smallest particle of light called biophotons. And those biophotons are a particle, but they're also a wave. And when they're a wave, it means they have frequency, right? Or like if I'm a musician, so I understand this all in terms of music.
Yeah.
It's sound, it's music. And we know that, okay, if you hit a D and a D sharp on the piano, oh, it's very dissonant, right? It doesn't sound good together. But if you go up to the E, now you have a major third, and that sounds harmonious. Those frequencies are interacting in Fibonacci proportions to each other, and that sounds good to us because that's the mathematics of the universe. Our body's the same way, right? So as that comes in, what this is a blockage of that light. So
Yeah.
that blockage can happen in the physical body, right? A toxin, a mold, a parasite can block the energy that is connecting our body to source.
Mm.
But what people don't understand is that that blockage can happen in the higher energy bodies.
Yes.
Why chronic illness and toxicity and mold disrupts, you so much because one of the questions that I actually ask people, and we've there was one customer who came to us and she said, I'm having dreams that something's trying to kill me. There was some intuitive, and I said, okay, I bet you mold.
Interesting.
Let's go look. And sure, it was a $3 million house, and the house was full of mold. We ripped the entire house apart. But it came to her in a dream. And that is
That's
not, yeah,
wild.
not uncommon. Many haunted houses are actually moldy houses, right? It's
Huh.
people who are picking up on the higher energy disruptions that those toxins and mold are caused because they're disrupting the electromagnetic field of that environment too.
Right.
It's not one thing, right? It can affect you on all these different levels. And so when you're healing from this, obviously you got to get the blockages out, but you have
Right.
to focus on this whole channel. And so when you're working with something like quantum energy or your work, and there's other ways to work in that magnetic field that don't, that involve other things too. But what you're trying to do is you're getting your DNA back into coherence, into
Mm.
quantum coherence with that channel of light. And that's what happened in her case. It's what happens. It's what happens in many other cases. But we don't have a holistic understanding of our health, right? We don't understand that health is, you cannot separate it from spirituality. You can't separate
It's
it. It's
impossible.
impossible. It's the same thing because physically it's the same thing, but also back to what we talked about. When you have a spiritual identity in your suffering, then we don't want the things that are good for us. We want the things that are familiar to us.
Hmm.
So when you've been sick for years and years, you
It's all you
are
know.
it's all you know, right? So there's a fear of actually healing, and it's not conscious, right? It's
Right.
below your level of perception. And now I know, I used to think that our customers were the people who were the sickest. And then I realized the sickest people don't know they're sick. Many of them don't know they're sick and they don't want to get well.
Yeah.
And so I realized very quickly, wait a minute, I can't sell products or help people who don't actually want to get better. So
Yep.
it's why the education is so important. First, people have to wake up. They have to wake up to the fact that I am sick. And the biggest reason that people don't uh, move into action is because that realization then it implores accountability. Now
Mm.
they have to do something. And it's not like, oh, I've got to go to the doctor and take my medicine.
No.
I have to change my life, right? The reason that your environment is making you sick is because of your lifestyle. And that we've lost this lifestyle of purifying our environment. But it's the reason why, if you go read the Bible or other religious texts, they all have cleaning rituals. Every religion, right, has ritualistic things that are a part of it. And we've kind of brushed that to the side in the modern age. It was, oh, we don't need that. We've got sanitation and all these things. And those are the largest reasons why modern health, is better. But what we don't understand is that there's this other component of toxicity. And to actually change that about your life could mean significant changes in your life. And most people are comfortable and they don't want to change. They like the way that they live. They don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to know that because they have to do something about it.
100%. And Albert Einstein did say frequency is the future of medicine. So, I
Yeah.
mean, we're seeing a huge shift. It's going to take some time, of course. However, I think that and I'm glad that you're talking about energy medicine because it is something that I teach on because when I start to work with people and I start to explain this and break it down, it's like, okay, is it the chicken or the egg? We don't know. Like, did it start in the physical body? Did it start in the energetic body? We don't know, but let's hit both because why not?
Yeah.
And, a lot of people start to put the pieces of the puzzle together and they're like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And when you are exposed to mold or any type of like chemical exposure, environmental toxins, whatever it may be, that deters you and inhibits your intuitive muscle, which is our connection to source. And if you don't have that intuitive muscle, you're basically walking around like a zombie and not knowing like what's left, right, up, down. You're so lost and confused. And again, this is where people do become addicted to their suffering. And I see it all the time. And you can't like force people, but this is where the education piece comes in. It's like, all right, let's break this down. And I love that you are incorporating this because it is such a missing piece of the puzzle for people to understand to actually like what is health and what is true healing. Like we
Yeah.
have to hit both. And also another thing that I think people get really like, besides the whole like having to change their entire environment in their life, it takes time. It takes time, and people are very impatient. They want it quickly. That's why pharmaceuticals, because it's like putting a band-aid on it. But a lot what I like to explain too is the energetic body is always ahead of the physical body. So that's why it takes time for the physical body to heal, because when you're doing that work, you're cleansing out the vessel, right? We're cleansing that out. But then on the other side, ancestral healing, doing like all these, energy medicine, quantum healing, all these things, that takes time. And the energy body is just ahead of the physical body. So it has to like play catch up. And,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
something that people don't
it does.
understand.
Yeah, it does. And we're more aware of our physical body. And
Yeah.
I think it does take time, but actually, I try and tell people this, the physical reality, like matter, is extremely dense. Everything is light, right?
Yes.
The frequencies are light. Every molecule is light, right? Just vibrating at different frequencies. So it has the appearance of having different characteristics, but it's all the same. But on the physical plane, it's so dense that when we want to change something in the physical, it's extremely laborious if we're doing it in the physical. But the physical is a reflection of the field, right? Your body is a reflection of your soul. Your health is a reflection of the internal state. When you go up the frequencies, the higher you get, actually, the faster that you can change that state, right? So, and this understanding has changed my whole life
Mm,
because I realized, like, okay, if I'm trying to build my company or grow a relationship or whatever it is, the only way to do that is to go up into the archetypal realm and change your identity of who you are. And that happens at the speed of light because it's
mm,
light, right? It doesn't happen at the speed of light down here. It happens extremely slowly. But you
yes.
can change it at the speed of light. And that will cause a resonance down the chain that can heal the physical body instantly. And I have witnessed that on multiple occasions. This is what a miracle is, right? We call it
Yes.
miracle things that we don't understand, but there's a mechanism behind miraculous healing. Our view of the world is so skewed
Mm.
that to us it seems like a miracle when these things happen. But that's the way it's supposed, it's designed that way.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is something where the future is headed. Science and spirituality are two sides of the same coin. Like you literally cannot separate the two. And I am so hopeful with where everything is going, because I mean, people like you look at the work you're doing, it's absolutely incredible. Like we were talking about mold and now we're talking about like
Yeah.
quantum
Yeah.
healing. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's just where if someone is starting and they're like, "Oh my God, I have mold in my home. Like, what do I do?" They contact you, for example. What's kind of the process? Like, what do you guys do in order to, because now you have all these other components that are absolutely incredible. So like how does that work?
Yeah. Great question. Well, I'll back up a little bit and start with people who don't know if they have mold, right?
Okay.
Who they're sick, right? And they're like, oh, could this be? Yeah, I have all of those symptoms that you're talking about. Like, how do I know if it's in my home? What a lot of, traditionally there's testing, right? You call an environmentalist, you can order a test. Um, I My philosophy on that is changing for a couple of reasons. Testing is good, data is good. It's the same thing as with your health, right? You go to a doctor, you get labs done, they give you information. but that doesn't get
Now,
you better,
now
right?
what? Now
And
what?
and that
Yeah.
information needs to be contextualized, and it may
Yeah.
not pick up everything, and it may miss something, or it may show you, a false positive. So data is always going to have gaps in it. And what's important is not what's on that piece of paper, but how you feel. Because that environmentalist is not testing for mycotoxins.
Right.
So often he'll come in and say, "Oh, your home looks great." And that just leaves you even more confused because you had a professional come in and say that everything is fine. So for people who are sick, what I typically like to say is leave the home for a few days. Do you feel your symptoms get better? You don't even need to call an environmentalist at that point to determine. You know at that point that your building is making you sick. Next step, okay? And then say, okay, I believe my building's making me sick. I feel better when I leave. And yeah, my crawl space is a little musty, or last year there was that leak, or we had that flood a couple years ago. You might have an idea where the mold might be. So the next stage, what I like to tell people is there's really three places in a home that buildings fail. And a building failure is what causes these issues. We have mold problems because we build buildings incorrectly, right? So the three areas that make homes toxic, the first are hidden leaks, and this is what people are familiar with, right? You have it rains there's a leak, a pipe burst, and water gets somewhere where you can't see, and over time, sometimes years, right, that mold will grow,
Mm,
and that air, those toxins and those spores will come out of the sockets or wherever that air can leak into the home, and it can make you sick. But a lot of that mold is very contained, right? So for many people, when you open up that, then you actually make it worse, right? And we talked about that. So that's the first way. And that can be very difficult and expensive to fix, right? When you have a long chronic problem in your building, you need a mold remediator to come in and to rip that out and remove the mold. Now,
mm,
it's very important for people to understand that you cannot fog. It is not correct to fog for mold. If you have a mold issue and you're just trying to get rid of the mold, you can't just go spray something in that building and get rid of it. Oftentimes that'll aggravate the mold. It won't kill it. It survives and then it releases those toxins and you're in an even worse situation. So
mm,
if you're doing mold remediation, you need to have a good remediator that's removing the source. So inside the walls, that's the first place. The second place is in the crawl space. And in Louisiana, we didn't grow up with crawl spaces. We had slab foundations, but lots of areas of the country do. And the crawl space is almost always neglected, right? You never go down there. You may have owned the home for 10 years, right? And you've never even peeked into the crawl space. Well, 60 to 70%, they say, of the air that you breathe in your building actually comes up from the crawl space. There's something called the
mm,
stack effect in the house, and it's pressure, and it pushes that air into the home. So I have, in many, many cases, it's one of the first places I look when someone is sick. You open up the crawl space, and if there's moisture, if it's musty down there, that is one of the biggest problems because you're breathing all of that air in. The third place is the HVAC system. And this is the most detrimental to people because, your AC, it really has two functions. One function is to heat and cool the air. It's for comfort and temperature. But frankly, the more important function is to dehumidify the air. Because as that system pulls that air in, it's pulling the humidity out of the air and it's draining it out through the condensation line, right? And then it's putting that fresh, cool air that's dry back into the environment. Well, that system, there are many places that it can fail, right? You can get leaks in that ductwork, which can pull hot air in, which then creates condensation and sweating inside, which then grows mold. The coils themselves can grow mold on them. The condensate line, it's very common for the condensate line to back up, the drain pan, your alarm doesn't go off, it floods. So lots of places where that HVAC system can fail and grow mold. And when it does that, now the lungs of the home are infected. So
mm.
all the air, you have a mycotoxin producing machine at the center of your home. And the most extreme cases we see are people who have mold in their HVAC system. Now, the good news is that's the easiest place to clean.
Mm,
In some cases, you might need to replace the ductwork. It might be damaged, beyond cleaning, and that can be expensive. But if you need a cleaning, that is something that people can do. So those three areas, those are the places to look. Try and figure out if it's in your HVAC, check out your crawl space, And then, you can buy a moisture meter at Home Depot for 20 bucks, walk around your house, you can hold it up to the wall and it'll tell you if there's moisture behind that wall. So that's an easy thing, cheap thing that people can do. But once okay, I'm sick, I have mold, now what do I do?
Mm.
This is where, we come in. And there's a lot of information out there online right now. And some of it's good information some of it is bad information. Some of it is good information, but it's just not complete. So when you're talking about mold remediation and fixing the mold problem, that's the first thing you want to do. So you want to fix leaks first, then fix mold, then detoxify the home. So fixing the leak, that is the structural part. That would involve a contractor, or maybe, you can do it yourself, but you want to stop what's causing the growth, the moisture. Then you want to remove the mold. And people have a lot of questions around this. We tell people before you run the home detox, you want to remove that mold because there may be very hidden areas of the mold that you can't get to. So if you detox the home and you don't kill the mold, it might release some more mycotoxins, which means
Oh,
you got to
okay.
do the whole thing again, right? So first, fix the leak, then remediate the mold, work with a good remediator, and then you want to detox the home. Now, that's very simple, but what a lot of people run into is they say, "Oh, well, we did get remediation, or we don't know if there's mold, or we think maybe there is. We don't really know." And that is really something that there's no one answer for that, other than we say you want to do the best job you can to remove that mold first. When you get into the detox portion, and we'll talk about the Superstratum Home Detox. So we have three products that make up this system. The first is our cleaners. So we have our building cleaner and our everyday cleaner. The everyday cleaner you can use all around the home, kind of in your everyday. I use it for literally everything from washing my vegetables to like cleaning blood to cleaning my bathroom, and it's a fantastic cleaner. That is a 300 part per million version of the product. And then the building cleaner is a 500 part. So it's more concentrated. Now,
Okay.
this cleaner is actually made with a special chemical. It's a special type of hypochlorous acid. It's called HeHOCl, or hypotonic electrolytic hypochlorous acid. Very fancy way of describing this, but it's a very simple chemical. Actually, your body makes it. It's what your immune system makes to destroy pathogens and bacteria and toxins and all these things. It generates this. This hypochlorous acid now is extremely popular in the last couple of years. Actually, I try and tell women this, but the antibacterial face sprays that you use now, they're almost all hypochlorous acid.
Ah,
So yeah, it's very, very safe. Almost no one has reactions to it because your body makes it, right?
right.
But all hypochlorous acid, it's used in antiviral, antimicrobial, antifungal, all those uses. But there is a particular type of HOCl that we manufacture. And
Mm.
that HOCl, it's the only cleaner that's been on the market or that it's been proven to destroy the chemical compound of the mycotoxin. We did that
Ah,
research with real-time laboratories in Texas, and they're kind of the preeminent mycotoxin laboratory. They had been testing different products to trying to figure out something that would work. And it was really a breakthrough. It shocked me, actually. We were testing other chemicals, and this chemical was so gentle. I mean, I nebulized it, I put it up my nose, I washed my mouth out with it. Like, I never in a million years thought that that chemical would be powerful enough to destroy the mycotoxins. And it was.
mm,
So that really became the anchor of our research to build this system. So the first
mm,
phase of the Superstratum Home Detox, and there are three phases. The first phase is the cleaning phase. So you take the building cleaner, you take a ULV fogger, which we also sell, and you fog the entire home. You let that fog get onto all the surfaces of the building, and then you let it dry. After it's dry, you take wipes. You can take microfiber cloths and the building cleaner, and we do a small particle clean. So we wipe down every surface in the building. That's for two reasons. One, you want to get that chemical everywhere so that it breaks down the toxins, but
mm,
it's also about physical removal,
mm,
because number one correlation to symptoms in a building is dust. Number one, because the dust is where spores and the toxins live. And you don't clean. I mean, when was the last time you cleaned
Yeah.
the top of your door? There's so many places where dust accumulates in your home, and those
Yeah.
air currents, make them airborne. We breathe them in, and they get straight into our bloodstream from our lungs. And when you inhale them through the nose, they cross the blood-brain barrier. They get straight to
Right.
the brain. Now, this was not known before. This is really the message that we're telling people. Mycotoxins are heavily researched and studied within agriculture because they get into food, and they're highly carcinogenic, they're highly dangerous within food, and they're highly, highly regulated. But we did not know that these same toxins are not just on the surfaces of our buildings, but they're in the air. So what I like to say to people is when you want to get a chemical into your body and feel the experience of it, what do? You don't eat it, you smoke it, right? It gets
Mm,
into the lungs because it goes straight into the blood. So these toxins in our buildings are actually more dangerous than the toxins that we know about in our food. So that's why this first phase of cleaning all the dust is so important with the right chemistry. Once you have cleaned that environment, then you move on to the second phase. This is the gas phase. So this involves our product that is called the Superstratum Deodor Balm. The deodor balm, it's a little compressed sponge. They're about this big. We've got three different sizes of them, and they cover a different amount of cubic footage, in a building because it's gas. So in the home, you put these packets out in all the rooms and the bathrooms. You put them in the crawl space in the attic. You put one by the return. So it's pulling that gas through the system. And it's a very easy product to use. You just add a little water and you put the sponge in there and leave. You seal up the home. And this happens overnight. You want to do it right around the evening time because it's more powerful when there's no sunlight. Sunlight degrades that chemical. So you
mm,
let that gas fill up that building, and that penetrates all the places you can't see, right?
mm,
It into all those hidden areas. It will also detoxify your soft goods. So furniture, clothing, pillows, these things that, a lot of people would just throw away. It'd be like a house fire. They would leave everything because they were so sensitive, they couldn't get those belongings back, to the state that they needed. We can do that now. And we encourage people to leave those belongings in the home. You turn up the pillows and open up everything, and you let that gas penetrate. Now, this gas is a different type of chemical. It's called chlorine dioxide. Now, chlorine dioxide is probably the most powerful oxidation chemical that we have. Chlorine dioxide gas was actually used during the anthrax attacks. It's what they brought in to fix that. So obviously very, very powerful. But the problem with chlorine dioxide gas was very difficult to deliver, right? To get the right amount of gas and to keep it in that building. So it was extremely expensive. You had to tent buildings and create, big machines and generate that. Our technology is a small packet that has two chemicals in it, and when you add water, they combine and they deliver an exact amount of gas. So we know how much gas that covers, and that allows us to make that calculation. So after you have gassed the building, you come back in the morning and you open up the building and you let that air out. You get the gas out of the home. And it's important. Some people now, our hypochlorous acid, you don't have to wear any PPE. It's actually a wonderful chemical to get in your body. Like you want to
mm.
breathe it in. You can go down a rabbit hole.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I nebulize it. I mean, I'll say this. I've been on vacation. I came back with a little scratchy throat and I gargle it.
I've heard of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
I have to
there's a
be
larger
careful.
yeah, you have to be careful with
I
what you
have to be
say.
careful what I say.
Yeah.
But for people who are interested in that,
Yeah.
research hypochlorous acid and find all the ways, that you can use it. So
Yeah.
that's a very safe form. But chlorine dioxide gas is poisonous when it's in its gas form, right?
Mm.
It's actually not in its liquid form. There are protocols where you ingest it, and those are miraculous protocols. And those doctors have literally been run out of the country.
I know.
But
There's like so much. We can't even say it
yeah,
on the
yeah,
podcast.
I know, I know. So you do need to be out of the house for that. And then when you re-enter the home, some people can be extra sensitive. So we usually say about 4 hours to air out, but there are rare cases where, people need a few days because they need to let that compound break all the way down.
Yeah.
So that's the second phase. Once that's completed, we move to the third phase. which involves our endurance coating. So this was the chemistry that we started the company with. We met a really brilliant chemist who had for decades had been working on different things, and he retired. He moved up into the mountains in Georgia and started getting mold and mildew algae growing on the vinyl siding, of his home.
Hmm.
And he created a very revolutionary, invisible, water resistant, breathable, abrasion resistant coating that you can literally put onto anything from your vinyl siding to the cavities inside your home to your carpet to the stone walls, in your garden. And it will completely resist any mold growth. If you put it in your shower, it'll last for about 10 weeks, almost 2 months in your shower.
Mm.
Put it outside, it'll last for about 2 years. So it'll keep, it'll resist growth on any outdoor surface. But when you use it inside the home, we say it lasts for 10 years, but it will last for upwards of 20, 25 years in an isolated cavity like that. And what happens is that coating, it has preservatives in it. And when you spray you just need a really light spray. You don't need any PPE. It's very, very safe as well. You just spray it onto the surface, and when it dries, it forms a permeable coating that's holding those preservatives on the surface. Well, when water hits that surface, it doesn't wash it away. But not only does it not wash it away, that coating then starts to open up and the preservatives become active. And so any mold spore, bacteria, or anything that lands on that coating, that coating resists that growth. And then when the
Mm.
water evaporates, it just dries up and heals itself. And it'll do that hundreds of times over and over and over. So it is the only solution in the whole world that can resist mold in a moist environment, an environment where there's continuous water. So that's the third phase. We go and we spray that around the windows and into the HVAC system, onto the coils, in the ductwork, all those places where you might get moisture. So that whole system can be done by a professional. If you have mold remediation, we have professional customers all over the country. We even help some of our customers connect with a professional, who uses our products, or we work with a customer's professional to introduce our products to them so that they can perform that. But then, like I said, we also have a DIY system, and this is really where we're focused. So people can get on our website, they can enter in all the rooms and dimensions of their home, and it gives them exactly how much of each product they need. It gives them instructions, tells them how to use it in their home. And then the final thing that we have is we actually have our own service company as well. So we have a service team that primarily operates here in the Middle Tennessee area, but also in the Carolinas, and then is mobile for certain jobs when people need that. So we do the service. We have DIY solutions for people who want to do it themselves, and then we work with professionals. On the cost side, people obviously mold remediation is extremely expensive.
Right.
This is not as expensive as mold remediation. When you're doing it yourself, depending on the home and what you're doing, anywhere from 80 cents to $1.10 a square foot. So you can order all those products, detoxify your home for around that cost. If it's a professional doing it, it can cost anywhere from $3 to $4 a square foot, depending on who it is and what area of the country.
At the end of the day, though, like this is a legitimate, like healthy solution for people to create healthy homes and a healthy environment to live in. And I mean, you've have so many testimonials for like like literally this miraculous way of clearing out mold and the chemicals and toxins that come along with it. It's just like a no-brainer and the work you're doing is incredible and I'm literally going to go on your website immediately. So
That's great.
I need to get the everyday cleaner.
Uh, and we just released our everyday wipes. So now we have the everyday
Ooh.
cleaner in a wipe form as well. And this is the only HEHOCl wipe on the market. I think it might even be the only, it's certainly one of the only, if not the only HOCl wipe on the market. So that, I mean, I use that product I clean my body with it. I clean everything with it. That everyday cleaner. It's a great intro product.
Yeah.
We have a combo pack that has the everyday cleaner and our endurance coating. And that's a great way to get introduced to our products, clean your bathroom, use the coating. You'll see the performance of the coating, very quickly because mold grows in that area. But I like to tell people it's like find that one spot that you just can't stop. That slippery
Yeah.
sidewalk, that shady side of your house, wherever it is where you're like, there's nothing that could work to fix this. Use the
Right.
product and you'll see the performance of it. And that will tell you what's actually happening in the home. Okay, well, if it worked for
Mm.
2 years on the rocks outside your house, then you'll have that peace of mind. And we actually had a call from a professional remediator a couple weeks ago who had done a remediation job 2 years ago. They had opened up a wall, there was a leak, mold growing. They remediated the mold and they thought they fixed the leak, but they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
They closed the wall back up and it leaked for 2 more years. Well, when they realized that, they opened the wall back up, and exactly where they had put that coating, the mold had started growing and it stopped, right where that coating was. And that's two
No way.
years of leaking, in that environment. So it's extremely effective. There is no other technology, no other chemicals that are on the market that can do what these products can do.
That's amazing. Seth, where can people get these incredible products and your services?
Absolutely. So superstratumlabs.com is our website. We've got lots of information there. You'll find our order wizard there where you can get a quote for your whole home. You can reach out to our customer service team. Elizabeth on our team is fantastic. She can help if you have questions. We've got a great chat bot. We've got some great blogs. We have a white paper on all of the science and the research of what we've done. And then we've got a great shop that has tons of products, all of our cleaners, all of our bombs, our coatings. And then we sell things like PPE and foggers. We also have another product called Pure One, which is an EPA registered mold killer and biofilm killer as well. And those come in little tabs. So when you have like really thick biofilm, this is an EPA registered product that you can use to clean that. So it's like a prep step. That's
Mm.
what for people who want to clean the mold themselves, they can get the Pure One.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, we could chat again for like hours about this. Thank you for coming on. That was amazing. Um, and any words of wisdom you would like to leave the listeners before we sign off?
Yeah. I'll say this because it's what I like to kind of close with and tell people. So many, and I'm sure there are people who are listening to this and they're panicking because
Yeah.
they're starting to realize, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. And there is our nervous systems in many cases freeze, right? When we're confronted with these things, especially when there are such large obstacles to overcome. You're afraid about the work, you're afraid about the cost, you're afraid about disrupting, having to have the conversation with your husband or whatever it is. What I like to tell people is because of the past types of solutions, okay, I either do nothing or I spend $25,000, right? And the mission of our company is to give people tools, to give people things that they can do to make their environment better. Even if they don't completely heal their environment, right? There are things that you can do that will have a tremendous impact on your health. Simple things, right? They require you to get up out of your bed, to move, right? You need to move into action, but you don't have to do everything. Clean one room, clean the
Yeah.
dust, a HEPA vacuum, right? Just start doing some of these things. And what that will do is it retrains the brain to get that dopamine that dopamine that it's getting from the scrolling or from the alcohol or the weed or the whatever it is that you're using to medicate, your own symptoms. It starts to retrain the brain to get those dopamine hits from the things that actually start to make you better. And so
Mm.
that's really what we want to help people to do. So if it feels overwhelming, that's natural. But there are simple steps that you can take, and those steps lead to other steps, and that will begin to get your health back on track.
Love that. What a great way to end. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yes. Guys, if you like this episode, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.